and that comes from what you put forward and some of the questions that our participants had forwarded too. So we put that together to bring this out here. Okay, now, all right. So we might not waste any more time, and we could start. And the others will join. I think so. We have most of Father Philotheus is the one, and Natalie, all of them are there. Okay. And Herod is there, Samshuddin is there, and
Hotan.
and Deepali. Deepali. Okay.
KK Agarwal is here.
Ah, all right. Then we'll let
Okay,
him
I've
make
admitted him. I've admitted him.
Okay, then shall we start? It's time to start, isn't it? So we will go ahead and.
Yeah, I'll open up the.
A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to my fellow colleagues from Australia. I'm delighted now to have for us to have the second part of this wonderful extended conversation on a very important area. Again, the interface of the interfaith and religion's role in, uh, in supporting and giving a set to the community ethical issues and support to the community on mitigating the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. We had a wonderful start for all of you who were here last Sunday. It was indeed wonderful to see the leaders from the various religion and faith traditions, along with some of the leaders from science, come together and give us uh, uh, um, an opening or an understanding of from each of their traditions on this important area and how we came together. And the most important thing that came out of this for all of you who were here was the fact that what we saw was we were all pretty much united. No, everyone what they put forward was very much similar, or there was everything was in common, and it sort of assured us on the importance of solidarity and all of us being part of the humanity, and that was the binding aspect that brought us all together from whichever traditions and from science. We all came back to the important issue of us being part of the humanity. Now, today we move on from there. Um, I think the important thing that I learned from our meeting last Sunday was there was solidarity based on human dignity, and there was a strong affirmation of faith in our common humanity that all of us belong to. And I think that was the strongest uh, take-home message that came from those little over 120 minutes of listening to and deliberating so well. And it was wonderful to see that such diversity came back to a single solidarity, and that was indeed wonderful. Now, today we move to a little more focus. We have a number of areas. We have questions that that all our leaders here, panelists, have put forward, and many of you who in your chat box that was collated too, and Professor Colonel Professor Derek D'Souza has put together this, and I think we've circulated it with the panel. This is the area that we want to be focused on. So it will be a little more focused today, and the very distinguished moderator, Professor Mary Matthew, is studied this, and she will be taking you through. I just want to again to all our very distinguished panelists, I want to thank you for the time that you've given from very different times, very early morning, throughout the day. So I want to first welcome all of you. Particularly, I didn't get a chance. Venerable Fortan, Professor Deepali Venut, welcome, and it was also Father Philgas, welcome from Greece. I'm delighted to have all of you here. So so we're going to focus on, and I want to just request that when the moderator, Professor Mary Matthew, puts these questions, will be, and this is a discussion. We want to hear more of it. We want to also keep it crisp as possible to limit it so that we can run through more all of us there. Now, before I go, let me again, for those of you who were not here last Sunday, I just want to introduce and welcome the Dr. Vishwanath Karan, who's here, who is the president of the MIT Peace University. He's also the chancellor of the MIT University, but importantly, he conceptualized, designed, planned, and created, under his guidance and supervision, the visionary, what's called the Peace, Dome of Peace, which I believe is the biggest in the world. And he joins us back today. Very delighted to have you here, Professor, and he's a professor of engineering technology. Then we have Professor Dr. Din Shamsuddin, who is representing the Islamic Sunni tradition, but he is also the moderator of the Asian Conference for Religions for Peace, and he comes from Indonesia, and a professor of Islamic political thought at the National Islamic University in Jakarta. And have Venerable Fortan, who's from the Buddhist tradition, and he's the abbot of the Quang Minh Temple in Melbourne and president of the Buddhist Council of Victoria in Australia. And I'm also delighted to introduce Professor Deepali Banut, who represents the Hinduism tradition. She is the Indian representative on the Religions for Peace in Asia. And Rabbi Professor Dr. Ira Bedzo, who's also part of our UNESCO program, and he's a senior scholar upon the Aspen Center for Social Values. Has published books in the Jewish philosophy, Jewish law, but he's also a professor and director of biomedical ethics and humanities at the New York Medical College and head of the bioethics unit of the UNESCO chair in bioethics there. And I'm then delighted also to bring to you the very Reverend Dr. Masaki Matsubara, who represents the Zen Japanese Buddhism. Again, for those of you who were not here last week, Reverend Masaki is the 16th generation Zen priest in the Rinzai tradition, following the Zen monastic training in the Rinzai sect in Japan. Matsubara earned his PhD in Asian religions from Cornell University, and his dissertation was the Zen master Hakuin. And he's the head abbot at the Watsumoji Zen Temple in Chiba, in Japan. But he also goes between the United States, and he's at the Zen Center in San Francisco. And now, last week he was from Japan. Today he's talking to us from San Francisco in United States. So very big welcome to you. And then we have Dr. Natalie Mobini, who is the director of Office of External Affairs of the Australian Baha'i community, and she's the senior or the from the Baha'i tradition. She represents the Baha'i tradition, and we have also have with us Professor Rodney Clarkin, who is joining us from United States. He's from the Northern Michigan University, and he serves the um, the Baha'i tradition in the United States. And we'll have Dr. K.K. Agarwal, who's a cardiologist. Yes, he gave exposition on all the Vedic issues last week. He's a cardiologist and also a scholar from the Vedas and from the Hinduism. And he's the president of the Confederation of Medical Associations of Asia and Oceania. And then I have the pleasure to also introduce to you Father Philotheus Maroudas, who represents the Greek Orthodox Christian tradition from Greece. And last but certainly not the least is Emeritus Professor Des Cahill, who is from the RMIT University in Melbourne, but Des Cahill is part of our program. He's part of the UNESCO chair in Melbourne, but importantly, he is the chair of the Religions for Peace for Australia. He chairs the Australia Religions for Peace, and he represents the Christian interfaith, Christian but Catholic tradition. So with that, I think I have not left anyone out here. Is that right? All of us. So I want once again to thank all of you for coming. I want to also thank our committee. We have an international committee with many of us here. I want to recognize all of them who have contributed to bringing this to you. We have our colleagues from Brazil, from UK, USA, Canada, and so forth. So I want to thank all of them. Now, before I hand it over now to Dr. Mary, I just want to quickly welcome all of you on behalf of the UNESCO Chair in Bioethics, Professor Amanon Kami, the head and chairholder. I am Professor Russell D'Souza. I head and chair the Department of Education of the UNESCO Chair International Program. And our program has around 250 centers in 58 countries across all the 6 continents. So we will have various units joining in, and I want to offer the welcome from our program. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Professor Dr. Mary Matthew, and we look forward to a wonderful unity in diversity and solidarity, a display and demonstration of the great solidarity that we all are going to demonstrate here from the same humanity. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Dr. Russell, and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all our panelists and our participants. This is the second session of the interfaith discussion, Interfaith and Science and the Role in Mitigating Science and Religion mitigating the effects of COVID-19 pandemic. And today what I'd like to do is, because last time we gave all our panelists enough time to talk about each religion and its role in this COVID-19 pandemic. Today we will do something more specific, because a lot of participants in the previous webinar had questions to ask. And what I'll do is I will, because I know that Professor Rabbi Ira Betzo has an urgent meeting to go for after we finish, I will call him on first, because then we can allow him to leave if he wishes. So Professor Ira, may I come to you? And Professor Ira?
Sure. I would like to say thank you for letting me go first. It also
Yes.
lets the conference continue elevating the discourse as opposed to starting so high and then ending up with me.
No. Okay, so because we need clarifications now. Now, what I want to ask you are two questions. Do you feel that science and religion should be kept separate in this COVID-19 pandemic? That is the first question. And the second is, what is the role of Judaism in mitigating the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, especially with regard to the community?
Sure. The first question with regards to keeping science and religion separate. That one's easier, so I'll take that first. Let's see what else it first. No, I don't think it should be separate. Like I said last time, science allows for a good depiction of what the facts on the ground are in understanding both the contagious nature of SARS-CoV-2, of understanding public health measures, of understanding both preventative and clinical factors that need to be taken into consideration. And it is difficult to make decisions on values if you don't know how those values play out in facts. So science should always be considered when making decisions based in reality. With regards to the second question, which relates to what the role Judaism may play in the community with regards to the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, there's a number of different ways that it can play out, but I'll give two. And I think both of them relate to the check on our assumptions. So I'll do a check on our assumptions, both from a public health stance as well as from a clinical stance. So from a public health stance, the Jewish tradition is quite communitarian. What I mean by that is it doesn't only look at the rights of individuals, but it looks at the responsibilities that individuals have for each other. So instead of framing discussions in terms of what am I allowed to do, it really frames a discussion of what are we to do as a community in order to make sure that not only are we all responsible for each other, but only through community action will we be able to work together to solve our challenges. The second, and very much related in public health, is the Jewish tradition is not a rights-based tradition, it's a duties-based tradition, which means duties towards others are not subsequent to the rights that people have. The rights that people have are subsequent to the duties that people have towards each other. So it immediately flips the conversation from, well, what are our rights to what do we owe each other? And once we talk about starting what we owe each other, then the questions of what we should do are very much based in concern for the people we might affect, as opposed to how other people are affecting us. From the clinical perspective, the same value check occurs, but it occurs slightly differently. So for example, at least in America, a lot of like triage or resource allocation protocols try to look at public health and clinical ethics from a consequentialist frame, meaning they wanted to increase or benefit as many people in the best way as possible. So they wanted to increase the level of lives saved as possible, which then changed to the number of life years possible. So that social factor, while potentially based on a coherent ethical system, took a lot of social considerations and social assumptions that I think the Jewish tradition can check on. For example, as opposed to saying we should maximize life years, which then might assume that people live atomistic lives or live lives individually without its effect on how those lives affect others, we'll tend to then look at age simply as a factor that's not social, but also clinical. So if you have someone with two people with very similar preconditions, very similar prognosis, you may defer to a younger person as opposed to an older person. I think we saw this in Italy as well. The Jewish tradition, because it's so communitarian and because it's so community-based, won't simply look at the number of life years saved. It will also look at how those lives are lived. Now, I don't mean to take social considerations in clinically, but it will serve as a check of saying, oh, well, we should just save younger people to, well, wait a minute, that's a bias or that's a frame that you're using. What about the people who affected more lives or have more children or more family relations or more neighbors that depend on them? Which is all to say that once you recognize the difference between a clinical factor and a social factor, then you can recognize that clinical factors should be taken into consideration and not throw under the rug social factors or use them as biases to frame a conversation unintentionally. So the Jewish tradition, like many of the other traditions here, can serve as a good check to make sure that we're using not only good facts, but our values are those that are warranted and justified to use in both a public health and a clinical perspective.
Yeah, Professor Ira, what I want to know is Judaism as a religion, how have they helped their community? It's not in terms of what the values are, but how have they helped the community to face this pandemic?
So I'm sure, as any religious leader can attest to, religions are lived experiences. So you can't necessarily say what the religion does, but how the religion is practiced in various communities and in various groupings will manifest in social life. So I'll say in the communities in which I'm aware in which I live, the Jewish tradition has been a very strong bond to keep us together at a time where we're being isolated and kept apart. We have found creative ways to maintain our community, both spiritually, both spiritually as well as in terms of living for each other, in terms of giving charity, checking on other people with time and our effort. It focuses us not to go simply inward, but to really make sure that we stay outward, even in a time when we can't physically be together. Okay,
so the thing is, what about people within the faith who are not, who do not agree with what the government policies are saying? How does the community deal with that?
So, I mean, this is not simply a Jewish question. At least in my part of the world, it's very hard to find a majority to agree with the government in any situation.
Okay. Because I want to know whether you know it's bringing the people together, or is it not helping at all?
No, of course. I think what's really important that the Jewish tradition has to offer is we recognize that the religion is both particular as well as universalistic, which means that we're always seeking to find not necessarily simply apologetics or accommodation, but a relationship between the community as well as the larger community in which it exists. So if anything, disagreement doesn't lead to anomic participation or doesn't lead to violent discord. It leads to a robust civil discourse, which allows us to talk and converse in society, voice our disagreements, while at the same time respecting the authority of the countries in which we live. I mean, we are represented by our government as much as we may disagree with our government when that disagreement occurs.
Yeah, so you feel that you should go, whatever the government policies are, it should be abided by.
No, I think that the government, by nature of our representative democracy, represents the interests of the people. So therefore, we have a responsibility to voice our beliefs and our values so that we're represented properly. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Professor Ira. Thank you. I will go through. Thank you. Professor Karad. Professor Karad, can you unmute yourself?
There is. Good.
Dr. Karad, you can go ahead.
Yes, please.
Yes, Professor Karad, I want to bring you in because you represent, the UNESCO chair. You have the chair for peace. And do you believe that the union of science and religion will alone bring peace to the world, especially in this COVID-19 pandemic?
My learned friends, I had spoken to you last time very briefly about the expectations and the promotion of what science stands for, what religion stands for, and what spiritual comfort stands for. These components like component of science or component of spirituality or religion, they really do not differ at all. Basically, spirituality is spiritual science, basically that word. Let us not confuse ourselves regarding whether it is scientific or spiritual. Religions have some special standing because they have been founded by some great prophets, the gifted men with the Almighty God, who came, somebody came 2000 years back, somebody came 2500 years back, somebody came 1400 years back, like Islam. So every religion has been promoted. Yes, it has been promoted by. Yeah, yeah, certainly.
There's an echo, sir, from your side. I think, are there two devices there or?
No, don't device it. I think it may be all right.
Yeah, now it's okay. Yeah.
So what I want to tell you exactly is there's no question about this, because religions which have been formed by some great prophets, great messengers, they have some different ideologies and the code of conduct given by them. They may have the different styles like the yoga, meditation, vipassana, or some other practice which the people adopt. But the ultimate aim and goal is same. The question is the spiritual component of life, which is universal. It cannot be isolated from science itself, whether it's a science system, spirituality system, or spiritual sciences, or even religions and the faiths, which teach us nothing but the love, compassion, reverence, and respect for the human beings. This what we have been discussing is about the whole of the human beings. They are all living beings.
Professor, just may I interrupt you? Do you feel,
yes.
I'm asking this question from the chat box. Professor Patel has, Mahindra Patel has said, can mindset change to become human first, rather first, then religion across all ages and gender? So what Professor Patel is saying is, can we think of ourselves as human first before our religion?
There is nothing like human first.
Okay.
Universalization of minds is the main issue.
Okay.
Whatever education system, whatever religious system, what is spiritual system, or any other system which is an inherent part of the human life, the life of the human beings, is a human society, is a global human society. We may be living in different nations, different parts of the world, but the goal is ultimately same and one, that is to live a very holy, happy, healthy, and a wonderful life, contented life.
But
they have been shown the way.
Professor, is religion dividing or is it unifying? That's what I want to know. In this situation, in this pandemic, is religion playing a divisive role, or is it unifying?
No, not at all. Those people who are wise enough, those who understand what religion stands for. Religion stands as a duty to the mother, the father, the family, the society, the nation, and the whole world. So religion cannot think of division. Only thing is, some ignorant people who do not understand the essence and philosophy of world religions, they may have some different opinions for the selfish gains. But the men who are the men of religion and men who have understood exactly this component of what religion stands for, what spiritual component stands for, they cannot have a divisive role at all. And to my mind, in the present world, on the background of this pandemic of COVID-19 or coronavirus, when we are discussing this issue, possibly almost all the men of religions, all the men of spirituality, all the men of other sciences, all the men of education, and even the politicians, the governments, they have one common goal: how to minimize this horrifying situation which has been created because of this, maybe I say man-made virus or natural one. I do not agree, it's not a natural one. That's my personal feeling, that's my personal understanding being an engineer, knowing what particle physics stands for, what this virus stands for. So to my mind, today the world stands united in this aspect, and mostly they have certainly recognized the importance of this coronavirus. Only thing is, realization is yet to come. It will take some time.
So what do you think about the media? Is the media dividing the society?
No, not at all. How can it be dividing the society? Only thing is, some of the media people, they have been trying to create some horrifying picture, more than what is required. And sometimes that fear which is being created because of giving the very large numbers and the pictures of that corona, which we have never seen. And that creates a fear complex in the minds of the ignorant people, possibly, but it is also still educating. It is trying to really make the people aware how to behave, the social distancing, the putting the mask, or taking care of the cleanliness. These aspects are being done by the media itself. So media cannot be blamed in that sense, but some of the people who are again possibly not having a full understanding of that role which a media has to play. In my opinion, as a man of education, more effective is media than even education. But education department, which has to have a value-based universal education, I'm saying, this value-based, that value word is very important. To my mind, I think the values are to be taught to the people. And now possibly because of this coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic, the world has come closer. In the Indian system, I think Mr. Agrawal or somebody said about the Vedic text, those words of wisdom, they have now got a very important role. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam has been the main issue. And I feel that we will certainly take some lesson. We will try to learn the very basic, the wonderful nature itself. What is the role of nature? We have seen the best of the best nature, the beauty of nature. We have to be one with the mother nature. The question is, if you play a horrifying game of disorder, disharmony, causing a horrifying game to disturb the balance, the sustainable development part of it is caused. You are seeing now in the whole world over today, we have been happening, but I will never say this is because of a disturbance. Otherwise, the sin or a good deeds is something different. But I have a firm belief that we, as men of science or men of religion, men of philosophy, men of these other sciences, we have to learn from this that we are not to play with the nature.
Yeah,
and
so that's
game
why,
like this.
Okay, so I was coming.
This is science to be not to be misused. The technology being misused through the biological weapons or the other weapons, what we have been seeing. You saw the horrifying situation at Beirut. You know, one trigger. I don't want to comment because it's a big list. But possibly we have been misusing the science and technology for wrong means. And that is giving us the lesson. As a teachers, as men of education, men of spirituality, men of religion, we have to understand and learn, educate ourselves, and possibly try to know how to use these wonderful developments in the field of science and technology too. That's my personal feeling.
So what about us, Professor, you hold the UNESCO Chair for Peace. Can you tell us what you can do positively with the, you have the chair. Can you tell us what you can do for the society?
Let me tell you, fortunately to my mind, I think Mr. Derek D'Souza made a mention about that World Peace Door. Fortunately, in my lifetime, whatever work has been done till the last 30 years or so, and the best of the best outcome is about the Ram Rahim Setu, the various temples, the various missions, and the biggest of the big dome. And that's not my creation, I'm saying. But it has come up, which is giving a message. It will be a spiritually oriented scientific laboratory. I'm saying this not myself. I'm not the baker, I'm not the doer, but I would like to convey to you, friends, convey to you, earnestly appeal with a tremendous passion and the fire in the belly that now the time has come to promote the value-based universal education system, having a component of science appropriate and appropriate of spirituality both put together. The scientific laws and spiritual laws to be put together to make a universal law, universal laws of Mother Nature, I'm saying. And if our education system can be modified in this fashion to a certain extent, I'm not saying everything is wrong, but now the time has come that the world has to realize the importance and the role of what spiritual component has to play with. The spiritual component cannot be isolated from the science component. Only thing is today in the most modern high-tech era of computer, IT, the Google, the Facebook, on this background, which I think last time I just made a mention, I'll just show you that small picture. This was the book which I showed it to you, friends. I repeat to you, not because it is mine. It is not mine. It is yours. But I'm telling you, these laws, which are called the universal secrets of the principles of the laws of nature and life. I'm saying life and nature. The universal laws, which were enunciated 720 years back by a certain person from India called Sanjaneshwara. I'm telling you, this is going to be your guideline. It is not mine. It is not yours or anything. It is universal. And this, whatever mechanisms which we are trying to develop, I tell you, if you add this component to our education system, all the universities, colleges, institutions, the men like you and me, if you really realize, don't think it is religious. It's not Hinduism. It is not Vedic religion at all.
Yeah. But Professor, we are trying to talk about this pandemic and how we can come together to reduce the effects of this, by using religion and science together. Yes, you're saying incorporate it into the education system, but in this current pandemic, how can we use this to reduce the effects of, because people are worried, people are scared, a lot of things are happening. How can we use science? How can we use religion to mitigate?
I had made a mention to you last time, madam, if you remember, and my friends, that I, for one, following in the footsteps of the philosophers and Dhaneshwara to Albert Einstein, Dr. Penrose, the Dr. Schrodinger, they have given a solution. What they have said is the world, like you and me and the UNESCO chairs or the peace chairs or the science chairs, they have to come closer together and try to establish schools of consciousness, school of reality, which will show you the, no, let me speak a word.
Okay.
This will show you the very nature of the virus itself.
Okay.
This will make you show you the exact nature and the very, very appropriate nature of this virus itself. And there is a much bigger mechanism called as the intelligence part of it. It's consciousness part of it, which may show the appropriate pathway to the world of people, and certainly show us the pathway not to play with this game like biological virus or a chemical virus or any other weapons which we are facing. Your atomic energy weapons or all other weapons or your power games is not going to have a solution for this.
Okay.
Remember this.
Okay, let me just read out a question because people are getting very anxious on the chat boxes. Professor Karat, this is to you. Tell us how you will use Hinduism to reduce this mental illness and abuse which is going on in lockdown and home isolation. This is a question from the chat box and addressed to you, Professor.
Now, whatever words I spoke just now to you, friends, I'm not sitting here as a Hindu. I'm sitting here as a human being.
Okay.
As a learner, as a teacher who is trying to understand what is particle physics, what is IT, what is computer. Because sitting here by Hinduism cannot have a ready-made solution for getting rid of this coronavirus. But Hinduism has certainly a philosophy which is based on the Vedic text. It is based on the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita and the Vedic text has given you very wonderful ways and means how to be closer to the rule of Mother Nature. How to be closer to the rule of Mother Nature, because the rule of law of any nation must run close to the rule of life of the people. And the rule of the life of the people must run close to the rule of Mother Nature, and the rule of Mother Nature, which we make ourselves, must roll close to the rule of Mother Nature, because the Mother Nature and we are a part and parcel.
Okay,
my breathing. So this has a meaning. I'm not talking here as, but I'm very proud Hindu.
Okay.
Because the Hindu way or the text of the Vedic text has a wonderful, wonderful pathways which have been shown to be one with the nature, like Ayurveda or the mechanisms, various things which we have been talking about. It is very wonderful. It is very scientific. It is very logical. It is philosophical. That's why I'm so proud of that Vedic text and the Hinduism itself.
All right. Okay.
But the discussion is not religion-wise.
Okay, you're discussing from the scientific point of view, right? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. Professor Shamsuddin, Professor?
Yeah.
Professor Shamsuddin?
Thank you, Professor Matthew. Do you have a question for me?
I do have a question. I want to come to the main topic of what we're talking about. How do we use religion or science to mitigate, that is, lessen the effects of the pandemic on the people? People say religion, from what I'm understanding, is people use it as a solace to go with the, in this pandemic. But can we use science and religion to reduce the effects of what is happening during this COVID-19 pandemic for our community?
Yes, certainly, since Muslim believe there is no separation between religion and sciences. There is no contradiction between God, science in the revelation, in the Quran.
Yes. How can we use
and
it to
also the God
reduce it?
sign on earth.
Okay.
Okay, and therefore this COVID-19 pandemic has given kind of a blessing in disguise for Muslims.
Okay.
To prove their belief, such as that the pandemic, any kind of pandemic, such as COVID-19,
okay,
from the Islamic perspective, is both disaster as well as a test from the
okay,
Creator.
okay. So how
And
do
then
we?
our belief,
Yes.
we need to combine to reconcile in our understanding between the two signs.
Okay.
By, as God in the Holy Quran ordered, to be patient and then to reorient ourselves to God. This is the most important thing from Islam, that maybe the COVID-19 pandemic is a sort of corruption on earth because of humans' deed, and therefore because of humans' system of life, maybe emphasize very much secularisms, that there is no life after life. So the first call from Islam is to reorient ourselves to the Creator, of course, based on our religious belief, but also by performing the scientific based endeavor, which are mostly in line with with religion. Now the Muslims reveal what happened in the time of Prophet Muhammad, for example. Similar disease happened in that time on a baby, and Prophet Muhammad was ordering for him to consume maybe the cactus, Indian cactus, which grow in the Himalayan, but then taken to the Arab and not grow in eastern part of Saudi Arabia. I think I read there is a scientific explanation about this cactus, Indian cactus, and was given to that baby, and he recovered by that time. Similar case, similar like the signs, symptoms of the COVID-19. So we believe there is great evidence on science, and therefore the public health measure in order to prevent ourselves from the COVID-19 are in line with the teaching of Islam, especially concerning the cleanliness, physical distancing, and also to safeguard not only ourselves but also the others. So blessing in disguise, indeed, for the Muslims to learn about their religious teachings because of this COVID-19 pandemic.
What about the psychological support, Professor?
We support, first of all, to our community through Islamic organization like the Indonesian Ulama Council. As I told you last time, we issued 9 fatwas, legal opinions, in many things relating even to the way we pray, not to, for the congregation, because we need to respect the physical distancing. It's not easy. Some cleric reject, but there has been debate based on the religious teachings from the two sources, the Quran and the prophetic tradition. And also number two, we convince our communities to follow the health protocol from the WHO, like the physical distancing, and we began to exercise that one in our mosque during the Friday prayer, not usually in Islam to be closer in prayer, but now there is 1.5 meters in our house of worship, and also in our classes. So we follow very much those suggestions which are in line with our religious teachings. So there is no conflict, and therefore the government have asked religious institution to support their effort. And many religious organizations, like my organization Muhammadiyah, created MCC, Muhammadiyah COVID Control Center, something like that, being involvement like maybe almost 100 Muhammadiyah hospitals, taking care of the victims. And now we created together with the government, not only the vaccine but the medicine, but based on that science from Prophet Muhammad from his time, the Indian cactus. So we believe this is a solution for the COVID-19, which is called, believed by the Muslim, as prophetic healing, prophetic medicine. So it depends on the government, because the government has taken the vaccine from China and from other countries, and also many of our universities. So really no contradiction between religion and science. They are working together, as well as another blessing in disguise. In Indonesia, I can tell you that this situation, COVID-19 pandemic situation, has encouraged all religious leaders, religious communities, to work together for human being and humanity. So in certain area, like one village, if there is a task force for a Muslim organization, they are taking care of the Christians, of the Hindus, of the Buddhists. And this is really a good thing from the COVID-19, that we can learn how to work together, because the essence of religions is to protect human being and humanity. Also the Holy Quran. Don't, if a person killed whatsoever, killed a person, he or she like kill all human being and humanity. But if you save him or her, you save all human being and humanity. And this is the ethical basis for medical staff, medical doctors, nurses in our hospitals. This is the safeguarding of human being and humanity.
Okay. What about psychological or counseling support? Do you provide that for your
certainly
community? Yeah.
Certainly, students of our school of faculty of psychologists from many universities, Muhammadiyah run 174 high learning institutions in Indonesia, working together with other organizations. So some, or many of them, are running also school of psychology, faculty of psychology. So our senior students in our faculty of psychologists are also involving in giving traumatic healing.
Healing, okay.
Yeah, healing.
Okay.
Based on the psychology as well as religious dimension.
Yeah, so it's science and religion
Science
together.
and religious go together.
Okay.
Because with regard to psychology, I think all religions, including Islam, emphasize very much the importance of the psyche, of the self, in Arabic term, an-nafs. So I can conclude in my observation that this situation of the COVID-19 pandemic has given blessing in disguise. If we can taking lessons learned from our situation.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. Can I go to Father Philotheos? Father Philotheos?
Hello.
Father, nice to see you. And last time you had mentioned that the church takes a lot of measures so that so that this disease does not spread. how are you helping the community how is the church, you represent the Greek Orthodox Church, how is the church helping the community to understand what is happening regarding the virus, and what are the efforts taken by the church to reduce, the effects of this disease?
We try to say to our believers that what is happening now is not a unique phenomenon in our history. More other epidemics were in our global history. And we try to find hope from our historical examples, from our Holy Scripture. Then we are trying to cooperate with the faith people
Okay.
and give them the courage and protect them according to the health protocol of the World Health Organization.
Okay, so you're helping the community. Do you give counseling, or do you people who are lonely, or how does a church reach out to them?
Yeah, we have a charitable organization that they trying to have contact with them
Okay.
with low technologies or higher technologies, with social media or other ways to give in touch.
Okay.
Although we have this physical distancing.
Okay, so you're using social media.
One part is this, yes.
Yes.
Also phone calls or other.
Okay, because you need to keep the pastoral care also needs to be looked into. So, looking after the needs of the people in the community, should be maintained. That is not lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And also we take care about their everyday needs because the senior members are difficult to find to go to buy something or to have access to some um,
to access the people who are older. You're saying how to access people who are senior, the senior citizens.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So you have to find ways for that. Thank you, Father. Thank you. Reverend Masaki. Reverend Masaki.
Yes.
Okay, so you're back in USA now.
Yes.
Okay, so now you can compare and contrast with us between Japan and USA, and how you represent the Zen Buddhism school, right? And how it has helped the community to reduce the effects of COVID-19. So it must be different. Is it different in USA and different in Japan?
Yes. So I was in Japan almost 4 months. Okay. So I want to share my experience here as well. Okay. But first of all, considering the topic of this meeting, first of all, my primary message I want to deliver is that public health and ethical responsibilities are one.
Okay.
Again, public health and ethical responsibility are one. Okay. Regarding the scientific evidence of the preventive actions to reduce the spread of COVID, such as wearing a face covering and practicing social distancing, I have little need to rehearse here, as there is now a robust study on this subject. Here, I want to address that we should cultivate our mind of ethical responsibility. Ethical responsibility. Given the reality of causing prejudice and discrimination against COVID cases, which I have seen in Japan, including forced unemployment, public apology, and public exclusion, we must stand up with more moral imperative based on compassion. with harmony, respect, empathy, and connectivity. So regarding what I heard and also what I have experiences, here are 4 just main examples. First, I got tailgated for driving from Tokyo, which has been the hotspot of the coronavirus break in Japan. I had this experience 3 times for just 1 month. And then this situation really happened in Japan as well. So it's very familiar to people living in Japan right now. And the second is, I heard the news that some could not get jobs because they went to a school notified of collective infection with COVID-19. Just that. And the third is, some were told go back as soon as possible, even though they went back to their home, family homes for Obon. Obon is a traditional summer holiday to celebrate ancestors. And lastly, I heard that restaurants that have been called out for the coronavirus outbreak are told to be avoided.
Okay.
So those 4 are some of the major issues we have faced, we have seen every day around us in Japan. So given this reality, I want to address that in a Buddhist view, no thing can exist by itself alone. No thing can coexist without others. In fact, we are always dependent on others in any situation in our daily life.
Yes.
We need to speak up our moral conscience. Moral conscience. This moral conscience is not based on any religious dogma and rituals, I think, but rather on the very fundamental ethical principles embedded as a human in a human community and relationship. It is this moral ground that we need to rehabilitate together as our ethical response in our continuous efforts of mitigating the impacts of the COVID today.
Okay, nice, very nice. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor.
May I go to Professor Rodley Clarkin?
Very good.
All
Nice to
right,
see
Professor Rodney, I brought you in this time and didn't leave you for the last.
That's okay. It's all good.
All right.
So,
You're going to talk about the Baha'i faith and
yes.
its role in mitigating the effects of COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes.
Oh.
The Baha'i faith, the attitude, I think, is one of the world is one country and mankind its citizens. And that we are all part of that. And like I mentioned last week, we're all cells in the body. So to the extent that that cell becomes healthy, that contributes to the health of the body, and vice versa, to the extent the body is healthy. So this pandemic that we're experiencing is just one of many crises that we will be experiencing as a global community. And it is one that each time we get this crisis, this is an opportunity for us to arise to address it. And each situation requires a different response according to the particularities of that area. So the Baha'is are encouraged to look to their own communities, to look to their own areas where they can be of service. One of the key ideas is to serve humanity, that we are actually to prefer others over ourselves. And so we should be looking to each community. And so the response will be different from community to community. Different countries are at different places, different communities within those countries. And so it also is going to vary because of our various capacities. I have this capacity, so I can maybe serve in that way. Somebody else can do that. Generally and systematically, the Baha'is are really trying to serve as a leaven to humanity, to try and raise up its values and its spirits of service. And so that each one of us, as we become healthy, we become like this leaven in this civilization. We are able, through our love, through our service, to help other people to arise. And so each one of us is to look at how we can be of service to another person. So one of the ways that we do that as a community, so each individual has that, is we offer classes for all the children in our community. We offer children's classes. We offer classes for junior youth. We offer
Professor, when you say community, you're talking about Baha'i faith, right?
The Baha'i community, yes.
Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah. So these are systematic activities that we have been engaged in before the pandemic, and we continue those, making adaptations as needed. And to offer devotions, you're talking about
and
supporting.
And this is all virtual?
Again, it depends on the community you're living in. That's where you have to use your own mind that God has given us to make the best judgment. Where I happen to live, it's virtual, because this is what the government and the public health officials have recommended, that you social distance and that you do not meet in large groups. And so, but there are places in the world where that's not the case, where this is not an option. And so each community, again, has to make its decisions about that.
Okay, Professor, the thing is, what about, because I've been trying to ask all the panelists, what about the psychological healing? How do you provide that psychological support to your community, or, you know, the community at large?
Well, again, each of us is going to, and each community is going to have different needs. One of the things that I'm doing personally because of this situation is I am finishing a book I've been working on happiness and well-being. Okay. And in that book, I describe, first of all, answering the questions who we are, because I think part of the confusion and the despair that surrounds us is that people do not have a clear understanding of who we are as human beings. And so I'm trying to, using science and religion, to answer this question of who we are, what is our purpose, and how we should be. Because if you know the answers to those questions, that creates the foundation and the tools for our happiness and well-being. So for me personally, I am focusing, because I have to social distance and I'm not being able to go out in the community, I'm spending my effort doing this. I'm now also then talking to people personally, people who have reached out, then I will talk to them to see. My daughter happens to be a psychotherapist. She's doing telehealth. And in fact, her specialty is trauma. So she has been working with people in that way. But each one of us is going to find other communities have offered food banks. They've offered helplines, and different areas have, and different individuals have offered different solutions. And I think it is part of our responsibility, being given a mind and a heart, for us to look at what is the situation, what are my resources, and to make a decision, how can I best be of service? One of the things you can always do, of course.
You're muted. Dr. Mary, you're muted. Just a minute.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I missed a bit of it, but I got the gist of it, Professor Rodney. Thank you very much.
All righty, thank you.
May I go to Professor Dipali?
You,
Professor Dipali, is she there? Yeah, Professor Dipali, you're muted.
Yeah, now I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Professor Dipali, last time you elaborated a lot about, Hinduism and its role. What I'd like you to do now is, how can religion help at this COVID-19 during this pandemic to reduce the effect? People are suffering, people have a lot of problems. Can religion provide a solace, or are there ways by which religion can help in this time?
Oh, yes. At this time of crisis, when people are not only undergoing, lockdowns, mental stress, people are also going under economic stress because many people have lost livelihood. So religion comes as a solace to many people because you see, when everything is, it's going spins beyond control, we look to prayer.
Okay.
So first thing is prayer, because whenever we are in trouble, we pray to the Almighty. So these are the prayers for each individual, as I told you last time, has an altar in each person's house. So prayer, family getting together, praying together. And the another thing is, because people cannot go to temple these days, so there are virtual satsang. Satsang means, when people get together to sing together devotional songs, where the priest or the temple priest sits and talks about religious teachings. So that is called pravachan in our Sanskrit term. So people reach out to understand again and again that this body is mortal and the suffering is there, but we can alleviate it by one, praying, second, because and keeping ourselves healthy, because sharira madhya kalu dharma sadhanam, because this body is this instrument through which we can perform the dharma or our karma. So religion comes in here to tells us what is our duty at this moment. So when you are suffering yourself,
yes,
and when you look out to the suffering of others, we usually find that if we look into our sufferings, it appears to be more. But when we reach out to others, that is where our religion comes in, where we talk of daya, we talk of dan, that is charity. And these are the qualities of dharma that helps people to not only focus on their own sorrow and difficulty, but to reach out to common masses.
But how do we
Like
work as a community,
yeah,
Professor
yeah,
Deepali? As a
yeah,
community,
yes.
what can we do?
As a community, there are many things that people have been doing. Number one, reaching out to families who are in distress. This is done virtually because people are very well connected in India, and you just have to pick up a phone and talk to each other. So reaching out to people in distress, reaching out to people who are underprivileged. For example, in our city, there was this whole, or in our country, there was this whole group of migrant workers who had to leave all of a sudden and go away because there was a loss of work. So communities, religious communities set up community kitchens. And it was very amazing, as usual, not only the Hindu community, but all the religious communities together, the Sikh, the Hindus, and even the Muslims. These religions came together. They overcame many of the prejudices to work together side by side to alleviate the problems and the suffering of the people who don't have uh, uh, much, or
Yes.
people who were suffering, they were out on the roads. And the Vedic, there's a beautiful hymn in the Vedas from the Rig Veda which talks about the Dhanana Danam, which says one who eats alone only partakes of sin. And if you have food and there is a person next to you who doesn't have food, and if you eat that alone, you are only partaking of sin. And these things are ingrained in our culture, and everybody is trying to share our food, service, and also, looking after, for example, the sick. The people have set up medication centers. They are telling people where they can go and buy medicines at a cheaper rate, because there is a lot of commercialization which is going on at this time, in which the hospitals, the testing centers, everybody is involved. But then people step in, and in each temples there have been people have put up, there usually are, small medication centers where people who are less privileged can go, and even people who are suffering emotional stress. So there is also the religious gurus. They are giving their talks in the virtual form, in the form of lectures. So people are doing that, satsang and everything. And India is a land of festivals. Just now we have finished that Ganesh festival, where usually people come together. Many festivals have gone by, beginning from Holi. But people are using now religion not to use just as a festival and celebration, but to pool that money, to help others. So that is one thing. Yeah. And also,
really
the other thing here is the bereavement part. Because COVID has all of a sudden taken away certain lives. And to cope, with that kind of bereavement, it is very difficult. Especially, for example, for us, the cremation is a very important sanskar, one of the purificatory rites, because that is the last journey that a person makes. And people come together, even if you don't know somebody, people come together to mourn and to help the people, the persons, to grieve over, to help to get over the sorrow.
I'm very glad you brought that, Professor Deepali, because there was a lot of stigma attached to this COVID-19 disease, and it affected the burial ritual, which is such an important ritual, for every religion.
For every religion, and especially for Hindus, because for us, it is a kind of, death is not the end of life, but it is passing over. But then this mortal body has to be cremated. And that has certain rituals attached to it. But in our Hindu tradition, already the part of cremation is done in a way which is so scientific, where the body, as soon as the person dies, it is taken away, and the person ceases to be a brother, father, sister, mother. It becomes the body. And this body has to be cleansed. It has to be then consecrated to the fire. And people who go to the cremation ground, they come back, they take a bath, and the person who lights the funeral pyre goes under a quarantine of at least 10, 11 days or 13 days. And people, will shave their head and the beard, that is the facial hair.
Because these are issues which are very important in our society.
Yes, so these things, have all of a sudden helped people, and getting over the trauma is very, very difficult. So people help by talking to each other, by, singing, and there are now the religious groups, who will sit together virtually over phone, chanting Om Shanti or singing. These things are, these are certain rituals which helps, to not only help the sick, but also to overcome these kinds of sorrows. So the religious gurus and the religious people, the communities are coming together to do this. So to be of service, and the celebrations. So that is put a full stop to the group celebrations. But people, this has not taken the fun out of people's lives. People have found ways, if Ganesh Puja cannot be done in a community, they will bring Ganesha to their places and do the simple thing.
Yes,
so,
that's the beauty of virtual, what is happening in our country. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Is Venerable Tan there? I hope he hasn't left, because I don't see him on the screen. Yes, you're there.
Oh, yes.
There. Thank God. I thought I lost you. All right. Always lovely to see your smiling face, Venerable Tan. you spoke about how Buddhism, you spoke about compassion the last time. In the last webinar, and I think that resonated. It affected a lot of participants who were listening to you. My question is, how can religion help in these difficult times? How can it help communities to come together to face this crisis?
Okay, first of all, I think the current statistics saying that there are 8 million people infected by the virus. But people tend to forget that there is 7 billion people are suffer due to the effect, side effects of this COVID-19, and they a strong deep impact in the mind. I think that the mental health has been badly affected. Now, in Buddhism, we saying about meditation is a way how to get people to have to examine and be more mindful and look into the mind. And Buddhists recognize that there are 84,000 types of meditation groups out there. Usually, there are 84,000.
You said 84,000 meditations.
Yes, okay. Based on that, there is 84,000 types of mental
meditations. Okay.
There must be 84,000 types of meditation. So from Buddhism, we look at that every religion has some form of meditation. So, like Professor Charlie say about prayer, yes, we say prayer also one form of meditation. When people discipline their mind or train their mind or be mindful, try how to not allow for the mind to develop into to become so negative, and people suffer due to that. So one of the meditation we encourage people to do during this COVID-19 is meditation on compassion. That on compassion is that we can start from both ends, start from the suffering, and recognize that everyone is suffering. So what we do about the suffering? What can we do to help? So it's a limitless what people with religion or with faith have done to help the doctor and nurse to help others. All right. So the government might have looked at the religion as a tool to help people. But from religious point of view, we say that we look at science as one of the tools to help to alleviate suffering for the people.
Okay.
Right? So, yes, that's how we see it. Or we start from the from the other end, not the suffering end, but the happiness end.
Happiness.
Okay. The happiness that I enjoy. I enjoy a good meal. I enjoy good food. I enjoy safety. But how can I share that with everyone? So with compassion practice, there is either a process from the suffering side or the happiness side. That motivates people to do a lot of things. So in the community, you can say that whenever they say some medical center needs mask or needs down clothes or they need some help, a lot of people are willing to help. Like in Melbourne, they start to isolate about 5 big buildings because a lot of infection has happened to the people who those the big buildings affect about 2,000 people in there, and a lot of relief systems come to provide meal and provide all kind of medical help as well. So
in one place, all religions come together to provide help.
Yes, help, and some like the community provide a lot of food to the people inside the building because they're not allowed to leave the building. They are in Melbourne, big building. Okay, so we see that in all religions, the way they practice throughout meditation. All right, either you contemplate, you look into your mind, or you observe the object of not just about the patient, but also the nurse and the doctor. They also suffer too because
I'm glad you brought that out. You're saying the nurse and the doctor also suffers, so they also require the help.
It's stressful. They go home. They get confused that they don't know if they spread the virus to their relatives, and they forget, all that kind of thing. So the compassion also reaching out to them as well. Okay, now that is one of the meditation techniques. The second meditation technique is the piñata. Piñata looks at the whole thing. It's not just about virus, not just about infection. But people suffer due to mental, due to economy, due to loss of job or isolation or loneliness, all kinds of suffering out there, not just one side.
Yes.
So maybe the government, when they form their policy, they look at how to stop the virus spreading, but really to look at from the point of view that the suffering is greater than that. So you have to balance. So always try to force the government to balance their decisions and their policies. Otherwise, they just concentrate on just the
virus.
Yeah, the virus.
Yes.
Then they don't.
So no, I understood. You're saying they should have a holistic view when they make policies. That's what you're saying.
So when you develop compassion, you also helping the government, helping the people forming, and encourage them to join in. Doesn't matter which religion, but they will join the suffering in many forms. So the Sunyata meditation, we look at the emptiness nature of the COVID-19. Don't look at COVID-19 just as a virus only, but there are a lot of other things in there as well. And of course,
do you believe when the government makes policies, they should ask all religious heads to come and have come together to make policies? That is, the government and all religions together. Do you feel that is important?
Oh yes, definitely. Because the religions are about the people.
Okay.
They are social connected channels, and the government should not ignore this.
Should not ignore. Okay.
Ignore it, because they can reflect on the people feeling very, very, very actively. So some government policy could not pick up this quickly at the religious institution. So religions in this sense are very helpful.
Okay.
They have to balance the government policy.
To balance the government policies, you're saying.
Yeah, look at it more holistically.
Holistically, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. You want to say something else, Professor?
Okay, I
yeah. Thank you. All right. I'll bring in Dr. K.K. Agarwal, because I think, sir, you would like to go also. Maybe I wanted to keep you for the last so that you can give us both your scientific and, but I will bring you in now, sir.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Agarwal, yes.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Dr. Russell D'Souza. I've been hearing everybody. I want to come back to a new religion and a new dharma. And that religion is that religion which bases on truthfulness, on karma, on unity and diversity, which believes on truthfulness, which believes on seva, that means doing service without expecting any results. And that dharma and that religion is called as the medical doctor, the dharma of a doctor. And that's if I see everybody, whatever you are talking, that's what the dharma of a medical doctor is. So a medical doctor is nothing but a mix of all the religions present here. That's my duty. When I say medical dharma, I involve both a doctor, a nurse, and a healthcare provider. I bring Mother Teresa here, I bring Nightingale here. So all religions mixed together is what service for humanity is. That's what my profession is. That's what my religion is. Now coming back to Hinduism, last time I said Hinduism basically divides people into 6 categories. Hinduism is not a religion. They says there are 6 types of people, and based on them you need to satisfy them. Based on them they need to participate. The first group of people is called Nyaya. They may belong to any religion, but they say, give me a logic, give me a logic. This is called Nyaya. So these are the people who will say, I'm looking for a logic. Unless you give them a logic, they will not believe you. Okay. They may be Christian, they may be Hindu, they may be of Baha'i faith, from wherever faith. They want a logic. So if you give them a logic about social distancing, masking, if you give them a logic, they will believe you. And therefore, a group of people, all religions together who believe in logic, provide them logic. The second group is called Vaishashik group, which believes on evidence. They says, give me the evidence, give me the science behind it. Tell me which ACE2 receptor. Tell me where ACE2 receptor is present, where there is not present. Tell me it in the lines of, tell me in the line of physics. Tell me what is happening, which hormone is getting affected. Tell me which thymus hormone is deficient in the elderly people. So the second religion Hinduism says are the people who want Vaishashik philosophy, who wants an evidence, give them medicine, give them evidence, whichever religion they are. The third is Mimamsa. Mimamsa means look for what has been written in Bhagavad Gita, in Bible, in Quran, give them examples of their respective religious books and teach them humanity and teach them how to handle the pandemic. These are the people who will not believe on anybody, who will say, if it is written in Quran, I will agree. If it is not written in Quran, I will not agree. These are the people who we tell that they follow their religion dedicatedly without any problem. The fourth type of a people will be, they says, give me the evidence in mind, body, and soul. These are the people who believes in yoga. They says, whatever my consciousness say, I will do it. Now, these are the people who are creating a campaign in the US that my consciousness doesn't allow to wear mask, I will not. These are the people where you have to give them a logic, then only they will hear. Otherwise, they only listen to their consciousness. When they listen to their consciousness, if they don't know the knowledge, they may get affected. This is called yogic philosophy. Then comes is Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy are the people who believe in wave-particle duality, who believe in physics, who believe in that everybody is made out of unmanifest. So manifest is made out of unmanifest. Therefore, if we go into an extreme degree of parasympathetic state of mind, where we are connected to our inner God and the outer God, whatever decisions are taken, and that's what is called as Sankhya philosophy, which believes in unmanifest and manifest. Human being is the manifest formation of an unmanifest. That unmanifest can be Christ, can be Allah, can be anybody. And the last one Hinduism says is that is called as Vedantic philosophy. Vedantic philosophy is based on Upanishads, which basically talks about that it talks about two things. It talks about one thing is that we are made up of nothing, that nothing is the intelligence, and that intelligence in our body is the energized field of information. It talks about in our body that we have an energy and we have a body, and that energy is Shakti, and that intelligence is Shiva. So there is a union of intelligence with the knowledge, intelligence with a energized field of information. So there is information and there is energy. Both of them work together. And that supreme power is within me, that is called Advait. And somebody says, no, that is controlling me from outside, that is called Advait. That is called Dvait. So there are basically 6 types of people. teach them whatever science they understand, whichever. So if I find out logic, so I'll find out from commonness in every religion. So that therefore I make a medical religion called Nyaya. So I'll say everybody who believes in logic, come here, we will talk. Then religion doesn't come in. If I come back and say everybody who believes in Bhagavad Gita, who believes in Quran, who believes in their respective books, come here, let's find an evidence in your respective religion how to handle a pandemic, and they will find that everybody talks about the same thing. So therefore, as a medical doctor, as a medical professional, for me, there are 6 types of patients. I need to give them a counseling. So instead of going into the religion, I will go to this 6 classification and find if my patient wants, so suppose I say 10% of the society from each religion wants a logic. We will discuss the logic there to take care of the pandemic. If I combine all religion people together, they will keep on fighting. So there has to be a commonness, and commonness has to be, is it a logic? Is there a scientific explanation, evidence? Can I explain it with physics, biochemistry, chemistry? Can I talk about an external force? Can I talk about an internal force? Can I have a union of internal with an external force? Can I talk about how to shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic mind? Can I talk about how to take conscious-based decision? If I do that, I don't want to call it as a Hinduism or an Islam or anything. I want to call it as a universal dharma, which as a healer, I'm not going beyond a medical profession. I'm going to a definition called healer. So healer is a separate religion. In a pandemic, we don't require different religions. We want all the religions to become into one segment called pandemic healer. So I want to be a pandemic healer where all of you sit together with me with your respecting your respected physiology and your understanding. As a doctor, I talk to you how to take care of this pandemic. That's how Hinduism would have classified, original rishis from Hinduism would have tackled the pandemic like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very interesting, Dr. Agarwal, and I'm sure many have already classified themselves by now. So thank you very much for the information.
Okay, Dr. KK, that brings in some psychology and personality and so forth into your
whatever you want to call it as. There will be people who will say, I only believe in action. We all know inaction is not required. I believe in action. And when you say, I believe in action, then you will ultimately get classified into 6 classifications. These are called Hindu philosophies. There are 6 philosophies. So therefore, if I talk to one, if I make 2 people of 2 different philosophies sit together, I cannot attain peace. They will only fight with each other. Therefore, I need to classify people as per these 6 philosophies. Then they will only sit together and come out. Therefore, a person who is neutral can only be a healer. So therefore, I always say there is an extra religion called as a medical profession whose job is to heal, who is neutral, because our first understanding in a medical profession is we have to be beyond a religion. So therefore, we are the one who can take care of all of you together under one roof. And that's what Mary is doing. What's what Russell is doing. Both of them are medical doctors. Therefore, they only can sit together and make everybody unite together in the purpose of healing. Let this pandemic unite us together under one roof. Under these 6 classifications, you can bring 7th, 8th, and 9th, but these are the 6 recognized classifications which go beyond any religion. And this classification was made 5,000 years ago.
Thank you, Professor Agarwal.
Thank you, KK.
I have 2 more panelists, and I will keep Professor Des Cahill for the last. I just need to go to Dr. Natalie Mobini. Thank you, Dr. Natalie, for waiting. And someone will have to unmute Dr. Natalie. You can do it. So Natalie, Professor Rodney has spoken about the Baha'i faith and what they've been doing. Is there anything you'd like to add to in terms of science and religion? How it can mitigate COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes, I think a lot of ground has been covered by all of the panelists, so I'd like to build on maybe an aspect that hasn't been explored as much. And this is, I think, the role that religion can play and does play in building the capacity of every individual as community builders in the place where we live. And it just seems to me that this is something that's so important at a time when our lives, for many of us, are reduced to our homes and the small area around us. Because as builders of community, I think religions can nurture within groups precisely the attributes that are needed of hope, unity, fellow feeling, love for the neighbor and the stranger, a spirit of collective worship and common endeavor. And these are the qualities that are helping communities to be particularly resilient at this time. And I think the point here is not religions as service providers so much as religions helping people to be protagonists themselves in building community and in being outward looking and not limiting ourselves in these things to other members of our own faith.
So you mean that equipping people to serve the community instead of religion per se serving the community, right?
Yes, yes, I do. And it may be inspired by religion or motivated by religion, which we know is a very powerful motivator as it has been for thousands of years. And it's providing skills and capacities and attributes that help people to do that. So just to take a few small examples I was thinking of, I'm here in Canberra in Australia. I have two friends who've been holding a small devotional gathering on Zoom every Saturday afternoon, featuring live music and inspirational readings. It's open to people from any background. They held their 21st weekly session this week, and it provides 30 minutes of upliftment to a small group of people around them. It doesn't reach thousands. It's really what I think I described last week as the micro networks that are assisting at this time, you know. And I think if we're thinking about what each of us can do in our own setting to reach out to people who are within reach. I mean, other examples, a study group that I know also just nearby, putting together hygiene packages for a local women's refuge that is assisting women fleeing domestic violence, which, as we know, is increasing at this time. And it starts from the very youngest. So even children in the spiritual education classes being conducted online, having a session, hand making thank you cards for healthcare workers. And then that reaches out. But it's, yeah, I mean, just thinking about for all of us, the way that we can be an active protagonist as the part of the community where we're living. And I think the importance of this is it not only it builds community, but I think it actually addresses some of what you were drawing out earlier in terms of the support that it gives individuals at this time. It's very empowering to feel that we have a purpose and that we're making a difference in that small way, you know. And I was thinking I can be at home, I can absorb myself in the news, I can be, I don't know, I can be online shopping, but if I know that when I feel uplifted and happy, it's the times when I've been engaging in these activities where I feel that I've also served someone else.
Yes, that you've had a positive influence on someone else during this pandemic. Yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. You know, and I think it's very interesting at this time, you know, that all of these online services can internationalize religion, and it can give us shared experience across boundaries, which is very interesting. But I think we shouldn't lose sight of the importance of the local and the people who are around us and the difference that we can make in their lives.
Yeah, so I think basically we'd probably divide into the micro, meso, and the macro level of health. Yeah, thank you very much, Natalie. Thank you.
Incidentally, Natalie, this is the 22nd webinar that we are running. This is that right, Mary? 22nd.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, this is the 22nd. So it's been focused on from different aspects, but bringing this team together. And I'm very delighted that we brought this diverse group back. We are together, united, and that's wonderful.
Okay, so and now I'll go to Professor Deskahill. Professor Deskahill is actually the co-chair for this whole program, who has put it all together. And thank you, Professor, for being, I won't say the last person, but at least waiting till the end. We would like to hear, Professor Des is muted. Can you unmute him? You can do it yourself, Professor. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Mary. Please go on.
Yeah, so what I'd like you to do is just a little bit about the Catholic perspective and how it can mitigate the COVID-19 pandemic and what are the ways it can do. And probably you can give us a overall summarize what we've been talking about. That would be really helpful.
Well, I think from a Catholic perspective, the Pope had that iconic photograph that went right across the world on Easter Sunday in early April, when at midnight Easter Mass afterwards, he gave his usual universal blessing to a St. Peter's Square totally without any people. And that immediately sent a message to the whole 1.4 billion Catholics across the world to follow government directives with regard to social distancing.
Okay.
And so I think within the Catholic community, there has been a general following of government directives. And I think that sort of shows that these government directives have certainly, in most countries, certainly Australia, coming from the chief medical officer, totally supported by the federal and the state governments. And so there's been a mutual alliance between religion and science, because in a sense, religion, and this is the words of Vatican documents, maintains an independence of science, except where it comes to the ethical dimensions. And that is where, because of all the values and ethical principles that pertain to each religious tradition, then religious leaders are ensuring at the moment that these vaccines are properly and rigorously tested, even if the process has been hurried up.
Okay.
Because I think religious leaders are basically saying to the scientists, hurry it up, get a vaccine as quickly as possible, but don't take shortcuts. And the other thing I think that is worrying certainly Catholic religious leaders and Christian religious leaders, where is the problem still to come? The universal availability of the proper vaccine that works.
Okay.
Now, 3 days ago, last Thursday, a document was put out from the Vatican and the World Council of Churches. And it was a joint document about the pandemic. And it focused around the notion of solidarity sustained by hope. Now, last week I talked about hope as the ability to embrace the unknown and the unknowable. And then that's because of the unity of the human family and the heritage of ethical values. So science and religion are not at war, but they each have their own sectors, but there is an interface between the two. Now, this document really emphasizes about the scandal, and that's the word it uses, of the divide between the rich and the poor, and how the poor and the vulnerable must be taken care of. Yeah. And last week I mentioned about the interfaith perspective and the multi-faith action plan that's on the web of Religions for Peace International.
Okay.
Here, 3 days ago, you have the Catholic and the Protestant world coming together, and they make a very important point that this pandemic is a harbinger of future crises. And it's linked to climate change, and the growing lack of biodiversity may bring about similar pandemics and other. So I think that's a very interesting point. Religions have a surge capacity to meet immediate needs, because with religion you have the joining of the micro and the macro levels in a society, because religious leaders are in touch with their grassroots. They have to be caring for their local religious communities, but they are also in contact with the politicians and civil authority figures, because usually they are being consulted, not always, it's a bit patchy, but still there is some consultation. And there's been very little opposition to government directives, certainly within the Catholic Church, except for a small group in the United States, right-wing traditionalist Catholics, who are over-influenced by the American sin of individualism.
Autonomy.
Autonomy, yes, which does not take enough notice of the common good, which is a very strong concept within Catholic thinking. So that document that's come out called Serving a Wounded World in Interreligious Solidarity. So those are the words that are coming through, and it makes a number of recommendations, including actually widening the formation of the clergy, of priests, so as they can do a better job in responding to this pandemic, as well as creating space for dialogue between different groups within the societies. And I think we've all been talking about that tonight. Now, Professor Mary, I think you often asked about psychological support, and that's fine, but there's also spiritual support, and there should be a mutual interface between psychological support and spiritual support. And I think we've had plenty of examples tonight through prayer,
meditation,
Zoom meditation, mindfulness, etc., that come out of the different religious traditions, and that they intersect, as it were, with the proper psychological support. Because last week I talked about hope, but we also have the notion of Christian and religious resilience, and how we deal with the suffering however it's caused. Last week I mentioned, I think, how I've been to 3 live streamed funerals, a way of religion adapting to this very unique and tragic situations with over 840,000 people dead, and that would be an underestimate of the real figure. When we talk about Christian resilience, we're talking about, firstly, recovery, which is the ability to bounce back, okay, when we've been under stress or we've suffered a bereavement. It's also about sustainability, the ability to keep going under stress. And that's why we need to have and we need to share psychological support and spiritual support. And I think there's also a thing that perhaps tonight we've been a bit over-focused on the individual. And I'm sure Professor Russell will agree with this, the notion of organizational resilience. That is also part of that organizations can provide psychological and spiritual safety. They generally have deep social capital, and they have accessibility to a whole lot of resources. So I think that's very important. And I think within the Catholic Church, if I may just use a very local example, the Venerable Phúc Tan was talking about the lockdown of the high-rise apartment towers. Well, where I'm sitting at this very moment, one of those is 300 meters from my house. And when they closed those towers down, 50 of those children within the towers attend our local Catholic full-time school. And so the priest in charge went down, was taking food, not only to those 50 families, but the other families that he knows about within the high-rise apartments, and then constructed a phone tree so as he and other members of the parish community could keep in touch, because the towers were completely surrounded by the police. Okay. So as no one could get in or out for, it lasted 1 week, 2 weeks. So, so I think there's a whole lot of local initiatives, and Natalie was referring to this as well, the micro networks. I liked that phrase. And that is so important. So I think it's been a very useful thing. And Professor Mary, you may have further questions or comments, and please feel free. But those are my general reactions tonight.
Thank you very much, Professor. The thing is, why I use psychological support and not the word spiritual support is some people may not agree that they are religious anyway. So it's the place of religion, and but they are undergoing psychological trauma. So sure. What do you do in that case? That is what I meant when I said, that I wasn't actually separating the spiritual part of psychological support, but it was just that there are people who don't really, don't look into religion for any support.
Sure, and I understand that in this context where you're speaking to religious leaders, yes. It was important to make that point. But I think it was Professor Rodney who made the point about being a leaven to society. And I think the organizational of a society and how it copes. And we see big differences in the death rates across all the countries. And when you look at the Johns Hopkins University data sets, you can see those differences. In Australia, we've had about 500 deaths, all right? The United States is 13 times larger in population than Australia, but they've had, I think, is it 55,000 deaths?
A lot of deaths.
So, you know, difference.
175,000.
Is it? Okay, thank you. The differences are quite amazing in how the people and religious communities have been very important in this process of supporting government directives and regulations. And certain, with a few very rare exceptions, religious communities have generally followed and encouraged and supported the government directives, and then used the Zoom and other means of meeting online to keep in touch with you. And the idea of the phone trees, I think, is also another interesting thing. And again, lastly, to emphasize what I said last week from the Religions for Peace International, that the religious leaders have a responsibility to combat stigma,
yes,
to quell fears,
yes,
and to give the facts and resist conspiracy theories. That's an important role that religious leaders must play, have to play in this whole very complex situation that we're in.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. Very well put. I just
just
want
so
to.
I'm just adding here.
Yes.
You spoke about spirituality and religion, and Mary was rightly, she said that. But there is a difference in the way religion and spirituality, the definitions of the two. And in fact, Mary and Derek are there. We ran a program on using a spiritual or religious focus in psychotherapy. The spiritually, I teach that actually, and a spiritually augmented cognitive behavior therapy. So we do take this, and I think this is an important for therapists and others who can use someone's coping, whoever uses
using religion as a coping mechanism.
And so we use that to, I particularly, in fact, I was the first, many years ago, did the survey in Australia in 2002, and actually brought this whole program where we use a coping enhancement. If someone has got a religious or spiritual background and uses that, then we enhance it with the science or the cognitive behavioral sciences with that. So just to add to this very important area. Yeah.
Okay, so Dr. Russell, I think it'll be good if we bring in Dr. Ashraf is there, and he'll be our final speaker.
Yeah, Dr. Ashraf, is Dr. Ashraf there?
Dr. Ashraf is from Pakistan, and he's been here for all our meetings. I'm not sure if he's gone off because he's there. I think he's there.
Where is Dr. Ashraf?
He's there, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice seeing you, Professor.
Dr. Ashraf is he's an orthopedic surgeon and the president of the Pakistan Medical Association. So he comes, and I thought, this Dr. Mary, finally we thought we have a surgeon, a scientist, and he's got a religious background too. So I think, where's Dr. Mary? You could.
Yes, Professor Ashraf, your views on, you've been listening to all of our panelists, our esteemed panelists. And
thank you very much. Thank you very much. I hope everybody can listen me. Thank you very much, Professor Russell, Professor Mary, and Professor Derek, giving me this opportunity. And I must congratulate on this by the UNICEF group, that you are talking about, and you have taken on board the very important and significantly important issue, that is the interfaith harmony for the betterment of the humanity, for the society, for the globe at large, and certainly the medical sciences, and particularly what we are passing through the pandemic of COVID-19. And it is my more concern being staying in Pakistan about the polio eradication systems and polio eradication, but we could not make in Pakistan and Afghanistan. Very unfortunately that the two countries, this is the Pakistan and Afghanistan, which are under the shame countries. But having said, the religion and the faith, having all the respect to the religion, I believe that I placed a question to one of my friends that all the religions, they speak about the peace, about a good harmony, about the humanity. But unfortunately, most of the states in the world, they are somehow they believe in some religion or the faith. But unfortunately, we are not having the peace in the world. And why is it so? I believe that the religions and the faith, they have certainly all the answers about the humanity or whatsoever the pandemic or the problems or issues are happening in the world. But the main thing, as far as the health is concerned, I believe and I feel that I'm not that much wrong, that the religion, they have to follow the recommendations by the health professionals and the health authorities, regardless of the debate that their religion is superior, and all the religions certainly. And I have no question and no right to put a question that whether it is true or wrong, but they have the answer to it. But as far as being a humanitarian and a human rights activist over here in Pakistan, I believe that I have to have the self-negation. If you allow me to speak about the Sufis, Sadhus, and Sant Fakirs in our religion, in our part of the world, India, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and so on, that we speak about, and one of the Sufis in Pakistan, that is Bule Shah, and I will simply narrate, I understand the time, that Bura Banda Labban Turya, Burana Labya Koi, apne andar chati mari maithon bura na koi. So having said that, what I talked about the self-negation, that I went and moved around the world to find out in search of a bad man, but couldn't find that bad man. When looked inside, no one was worse than me in the bad sense. So self-negation, tolerance, debate, that is the basic idea I believe that we can speak about, and we can wait for a good word, a word of peace. There will be, inshallah, as we Muslims say, that there will be a peace definitely if we will go for tolerance, if we will go for the basics of the democracy, that is the dialogue, and we agree to disagree. So this is what I wanted to share. Thank you very much, Mary, that you have given. Thank you very much. Highly obliged.
Thank you, Dr. Ashraf, for your thoughts. And I think we have exceeded our time, and really a delightful session to hear perspective from different religions. I think we can all learn, and this has been also a learning experience. And I thank all the panelists. They've waited. Some of them are very, late hours of the night, and they're still up here for the webinar. So I thank you all very much, and I hope that these webinars, which will be shared to all the participants if they are interested, the link will be there. We can share it with you. And I hope it has been of some use and some benefit. And I thank Dr. Russell for giving me this opportunity to moderate this session. And as always, thank you to Dr. Derek also. I see a lot of questions in the chat box, but unfortunately we don't have the time to take. And if any of the panelists would like to respond personally to any of the participants who have directed the questions, you could do so. So thank you very much. And Dr. Russell and Dr. Derek, over to you.
Dr. Russell, you are muted.
Sorry. Dr. Derek, Yeah, is there anything you'd like to, because you're looking after the chat and all the questions, you want to bring to the...
No, I think it was most of the questions have been answered because I'm sorry. I think our panelists were following the chat as well, and of course, Dr. Mary was doing that herself. But if Dr. Katie is there and would like to just give a few comments from the participant side, because I think she's been very active in the chat. Dr. Katie, if you can switch on your camera and just tell us what you felt over the 2 days.
Yeah, Katie Carrega.
I am still here, and thank you very much. I actually am not prepared to be on video. I wasn't prepared.
That's fine. We can hear you. That's
Okay,
good enough.
Just let us know where you are
If you
from
can,
and
introduce
where
yourself and go ahead.
Yes. Well, I live in New Jersey. I've lived in a lot of different places. And I think most of my comments I've made in the chat. So yeah, I really appreciate, and I think many other people on the call appreciate, this session and this opportunity to kind of discuss and hash things out, because for me, like, I think I need to be active, like, in the discussion in terms of like the chat, to be like, I'm thinking at the same time. And you guys, thank you everyone for helping me kind of think through a lot of these issues. And yeah, I don't know that I have any like sage words of advice. They're just things that I'm like continually,
I think the participants have been responding to your questions, Katie.
Right. There's been a lot of back and forth, and I really appreciate that. And I think, all of this just needs a whole lot more thinking, meditation, prayer, and then, that questioning of ourselves of like, how do we put this into action? I think that's really what I wanted to emphasize, without having italices in the chat box, right, is just emphasizing that, like, that internal reflection of getting our hearts right. I'm also coming from kind of a Sufi background, getting our hearts right, because, the words are beautiful and peace-loving, but somehow we just keep getting into violence, and particularly speaking from the United States, right, where things are accelerating and escalating in terms of the violence that we're seeing. It's a scary time for us, with COVID-19 on top of all of these other social issues that we're dealing with. So,
Katie, can you tell us your profession? Are you, because you didn't tell us what exactly you do?
So I'm a professor, well, part-time lecturer, basically, of global health perspectives at Rutgers University. And although I must say, disclaimer, I'm not representing Rutgers University, but I've also taught public health and global health in many other contexts. I've taught, and if you know anything about New Jersey, actually, I spent significant time in India and some time in Pakistan as well. And it's like, I've run into people that are like, oh, I have family there. And, but we have a very, very high like Desi population. We have a very just diverse, I'm in Jersey City, so it's a very diverse population in general, religiously speaking and ethnically speaking. And I taught at, well, Rutgers University is one of the most diverse institutions in the country. And I also taught at the one that's vying for the top position, which is New Jersey City University. And there, among other different subjects, I taught Latin American studies, but I primarily taught understanding ethnic conflict and civil war. And so that's what I've kind of been sharing with you guys, is some of the reading from that.
Thank you, Dr. Katie. Wonderful that you've been so active on the chat box, and you've made it exciting for the participants also.
Thank you. Well, I'm honored, and hopefully I aspire to be an activist. So
that's good.
If action comes from that. So
thank you. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Katie.
Dr. Russell, would you like to close the session?
Yes. Thank you all, participants. All of you made this very rich. You know, it's to us. We have these wonderful panelists so from around the world, as you could see, almost from every part of the world. We have come together, and we go out of this program feeling that we are all the same, isn't it? Yeah, I saw ultimately Dr. Vatsal has written, ultimately it looks like all roads are coming back. We are all come back to the same. We're going back united, feeling that we must belong to that humanity. That's what comes out of this. Now, one of the things we've been doing and we would like to continue, I asked Dr. Virani, Professor Virani, but Professor Des Cahill, who's also an ordained priest, he usually gives a summary of this each of these webinars, our discussion, and he's going to be doing the same for the last two that we've had. And what I want to do is to put this and to ask all of you to put this together, because we would like to publish this proceedings of this very important conversation meeting of great minds, leaders of tradition. We want to publish this in the International Journal of the Global Bioethical Inquiry, which is an internationally cited journal of the UNESCO. And so I'm going to ask all of you to be a joint authored publication, which I think will be very important. I hope all of you will join and take part, and we'll get this executive summary, which will then send it across, and we'll try to put, each of us have something to put into that and come out with a publication that we will have published in a journal, which I think will be very important for everyone, but also it's a cited journal. It will be there for to be used again. And I also this was discussed by Dr. Virani. I think he sent a note, or he said it last time. But one of you, we thought one of the things we'd like to do is to continue this conversation of and you know, down with the group, seeing how we take this forward, how we can contribute, and probably in the not too distant future, we should be looking at coming together again, probably as this pandemic, as we progress and as we come out of the other end again in solidarity. So if you all are in agreement, we'll take this forward, and we want to thank each and every one of you who have contributed. We want to definitely appreciate that. We also appreciate all our participants from around the world. I could see we have our colleagues even from Brazil. Dr. Deborah is there from Brazil, Dr. Patel from London. We have a whole lot of colleagues who are here, even right at this end. From all over the world, you'll see people here. So thank you all very much for that. Thank you, Dr. Mary, for your moderation, or moderating this 22nd webinar. We will continue. We have programs. We'll continue this, and you'll all be welcome. You'll be kept informed, as Dr. Deborah from Brazil, another country that's also in having difficulties with the COVID. Dr. Deborah, you could wave out so all could know you, see you. See, that's Dr. Deborah from Brazil. So anyhow, we'll keep in touch, and we shall meet again, and you'll all be welcome to be with us as we go on with this program. So thank you very much, all of you. Stay well, stay blessed, and stay safe. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.